welcome to the first video of a series of tutorials on code extensions within VREasy. So code extensions are ways of extending VREasy without having to hack into the base code that we provide. The code extension that we're going to focus on today's video is triggers. And if you're familiar with VREasy, you would already heard of triggers before. We provide several triggers as part of the VREasy package. Some of them are mobile tap for Gear VR, keyboard trigger, lip motion pinch trigger, mouse trigger, and Steam controller trigger. So all these classes, they provide a way to interface with VREasy to control certain behaviors. So these behaviors are, for instance, the VR locomotion script, which allows you to move around, the grab controller, and the pointer selector. So all those three functionalities require some level of input or some initiation of action. So we do these in VREasy by using triggers. So if you can, at the moment, use any key on the keyboard as an initiation for those three actions, or you can use the lip motion pinch or the mouse buttons or any of the buttons in the Steam controller. So today we're going to extend that, and we're going to use the Xbox trigger button to allow to control those three actions. The movement using the simple locomotion script, the initiation of the grab action, and also the activation of the pointer selector. All right, let's get going. So I've created a simple script called Xbox trigger, which is just a test to see whether Unity is reading the right trigger of our Xbox controller. If you're not familiar with the input class or of Unity, I recommend you go ahead and check the documentation. I've based the input manager configuration on the website and the wiki of Unity 3D, now shown in the screen. So I will be reading the third axis of input manager for that. I'll show you very quickly the settings. I've created a new axis and I've named it right trigger, and I've configured it to read the joystick third axis, which is the right trigger. Okay, so just to test it very quickly, I've attached it to an object, and if everything goes right, I should see a message when I press the trigger. Sorry, I'll do that again. When I press the trigger, I see trigger pressed, and when I release it, it stops. I press and released. Okay, so that's working. Let me remove that. So what we're going to do is transform that class into a trigger. So how do we do that? So VREasy comes with a abstract class, grab trigger, which is the class that all triggers must inherit from in order to be recognized by VREasy. So the first we're going to do is with the class, the triggers must reside within the namespace VREasy. So we're going to encapsulate our class within VREasy, and now we can already inherit from grab trigger. Now this should show a little bit of a compiler error, and that's because we need to implement the abstract member triggered. We can go ahead and let Unity do that for us. And this method is going to be called internally by the system to ask whether our trigger is being activated, it's being active or not. So if in our case, it needs to return a boolean. So it would return true if the trigger is being active and false otherwise. So in our case, because we want to poll the axis or the trigger, what we'll do is return this value. So we will return true if the trigger is being activated, or we'll return false if it's not activated. Okay, so we don't need the update method at the moment, so we're just going to comment it out. Okay, and we are going to go ahead and test it. So the first behavior that we're going to test is the first functionality is locomotion. So we're going to go ahead and attach the VR simple locomotion script to our camera rig. And for this demo, we are using the SteamVR camera rig profile, but this should work perfectly fine with the main camera as well if you need it. We have to configure this as usual, so we'll attach, we'll configure the head of the HMD, and we'll now select the input trigger, the input type as trigger. So this means the VR simple locomotion will be controlled by a trigger. And if everything has gone correctly, we should already see now that our Xbox trigger has been added to the list of possible triggers. So this is done through reflection. So every time you create a class that inherits from VR grab trigger, it'll appear right in here in this box. So we can link the trigger, and we can already go ahead and test it. So if we move ahead, right, so I have my headset. If I press the trigger, I can see how I move forward. If I release, I'll stop. I always move ahead. Pressing the trigger, I release. Press the trigger, I release. We have the locomotion done. Okay. So the next step is going to be using the exact same trigger for grabbing an object. So let me just remove the locomotion behavior so we don't get weird things while we're grabbing and moving at the same time. And I am going to make the right controller a touch controller. All right, so I'm going to go to VR selector. I'm going to create a touch selector. I'm just going to drag and drop the right controller, add, and again the same thing. If everything has gone correctly, we should be able to see the Xbox trigger as one of the optional triggers to initiate grab actions. So if I link trigger, select the object, I should see that I have the Xbox trigger here. So remember that a trigger for the touch selector is just the thing that is going to activate or initiate the grab action, initiate and finalize. So if everything goes correctly now, we should be able to start a grab action with the right trigger of the Xbox controller, and if we release it, we should see it go. So for that, I created a cube, and I'm just going to make it VR grabbable, and the default settings will do. So activate my VR, my Steam controller. All right, so here we are. So I am inside the cube, and if I hold on onto the trigger, I can see how it's been grabbed. If I release the trigger, it's been let go. Cool, so we didn't have to do anything extra to use the trigger for any of the two actions. So once you created a trigger, the trigger will be usable by VREasy. And the last one is going to be, I'm going to show the pointer selector, so how to activate the pointer by using the new trigger. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove the touch selector from the controller. And I'm going to make a pointer selector of the same controller. So controller right, drag and drop onto the selector object, and I'm just going to add it. And again, it'll ask us for a trigger, and we will select the new Xbox trigger and link it. Okay, so now we should be able to point to an object. Let me just click here, and then when we press the Xbox trigger, there he goes. We are activating our pointer selector. Okay, so that's it for triggers and how to add them to increase the level of interactivity with VREasy. Thanks for watching. Bye.